History is a collection of all the world's stories, a blurry pieced together work of every person who ever lived and how they helped define the world we live in today. History class is a boring memorization of facts that ignore the stories of people who actually made history. Hi, I'm Beano Games, and today I'm going to be telling you the story of Cheng Sao, the greatest pirate in history, using Sea of Thieves. Our story, funnily enough, doesn't start with Cheng Sao. Instead, it starts in 1802 with a man named Cheng I. Cheng, along with his crew, worked as privateers in the Vietnam Civil War, committing small acts of piracy to supplement their small paychecks. But that all changed when the war ended and the group was forced back to China. Cheng, deciding he didn't want to be poor again, united the band into the Pirate Confederation, an organization that would later have their colors stolen by the Power Rangers. They also managed to control from the Pearl River to the Gulf of Tonkin, pillaging, pirating, and making money throughout the lands. Eventually, however, while visiting a floating brothel, frequently called flower boats, he met Cheng Sao, who he fell in love with. Cheng Sao, originally named Ching Shihi, was a commoner, born somewhere in this area, around somewhere this year. Although I'd love to give you more details, little is known about Cheng Sao before she became Cheng Sao. All we really know is that she most likely lived in or around Canton. Shi was an ambitious girl, however, and once she met Cheng, she soon realized she could rise up from her status and become something more. She didn't just want to marry Cheng, she wanted to become business partners, and business they did do. They officially married in 1801, becoming equally important in managing the Pirate Confederation. Pirates are often misconceived as swashbuckling rogues who get into massive ship fights and are always wondering where the rum is, but that's wrong, you're wrong. Ships are expensive, and doctors can't exactly fix every blown off limb, so pirates more often than not have to rely on the art of war to get the job done. Deception, winning without combat, and most importantly, knowing your enemy. China's navy was a joke, consisting of infantry loaded onto junks, which were very easy to overcome. Exploiting this, Cheng Sao easily took over the salt trade, forcing every merchant to buy safe passage from pirates. I mean, if you weren't protected from the pirates, who knows what could happen? Cheng was the captain. He led the operations of the fleet, while Cheng Sao handled the business side of piracy. She was the one who made the Pirate Confederation unbelievably rich. Living happily and rich together, Cheng eventually adopted a son named Xuan Po Sai, who possibly had a romantic relationship with Cheng, but none of that really matters, because before we can say they all lived happily ever after, in 1807, Cheng was swept overboard in a typhoon and died. Whoops. Cheng Sao obviously wanted to take over the fleet, and surprisingly, there wasn't much pushback. Although in Confucianist China, women were barred from social life and sexism and stuff, most of the pirates were poor fishermen living on floating coastal villages. When a fisherman died, their widow would take over their boat, and considering Cheng already ran the business side of the Pirate Confederation, it seemed natural for her to take over. The commanders of the fleets were still apprehensive, however, as even though Cheng Sao wanted to take over, Cheng's son was technically the heir. Chuang, although young, was still an amazing captain, popular, brave in battle, and he had a cool red pagoda. But he instead decided to serve Cheng Sao as the Red Power Ranger. The leader of the Red Fleet. That, Cheng set to work reorganizing the fleet, which had slowly fallen into disarray, expanding their sphere of influence and setting up more rules for the pirates. Instead of simply plundering to your heart's content and randomly splitting the spoils, whenever a score was made, it would be handed to an accountant. 80% of it would go to a group fund that would supply the entire Confederation, while 20% would stay with the captors. The new code also prohibited rape, stealing from the Confederation, and leaving without leave. Any of these would result in gruesome pirate death. Sure, Cheng was a murderous pillaging pirate, but they were a progressive murderous pillaging pirate. Cheng Sao quickly expanded her salt trade protection to a protection on all maritime trade, giving the people of China a choice. Pay the pirates, or burn to the ground. The Chinese government tried to stop her, but their navy was still a collection of disorganized junk, which pirates could easily ambush and destroy with very little effort. Cheng Sao became so feared that commanders sent after her would sabotage their own ships so they didn't have to face her. The Emperor, Peking, still didn't really care. Well, not until the pirates killed the provisional officer. Then he was kind of forced to care. In a decision of tactical and strategical genius, he told someone else to solve the problem. He sent out Bai Ling. While Bai Ling was finally dealing with the issue, he was still a new player. He didn't even know how to activate voyages, or how to properly defuse a gunpowder barrel, while Madame Cheng was already a pirate legend, and she was about to become even more ambitious. While Bai Ling was playing catch-up, in June 1808, Cheng Po decisively lured and destroyed Kentos' defensive fleet, leaving the river delta completely unprotected, just as Madame Cheng had planned. For a full year, Madame Cheng and her fleet plundered the delta to their heart's content, extorting and burning villages, and killing thousands each expedition. Raids were expensive, however, and Bai Ling had finally leveled up while Madame Cheng's fleet was running low on funds. Bai Ling finally beefed up the military while simultaneously stopping the pirate supply routes. With the help of a British ship and 60 new Chinese war junks, they set out to stop the pirate threat once and for all. With a heavily damaged fleet, Madame Cheng was forced to retreat, leaving Cheng Po in charge of Canton. It was November 1809. Madame Cheng, having made it to her base in Lutao, awoke to a surprise. 4 Portuguese ships waiting on the horizon. With most of her ships beached for repairs or too damaged to fight, she immediately sent a distress signal to the rest of her fleet. Cheng Po arrived with his section of the Red Fleet, but the Black Fleet wasn't coming. Bailing wasn't going to waste this opportunity. He pulled in all 60 of his junks, 4 western vessels, and 35 fishing boats. Madame Cheng, meanwhile, was trapped in the mouth of the bay with a mere 7 junks. Impossible odds. But this is the story of the greatest pirate in history. Cheng Sao isn't going to back down so easily. The Chinese fleet attacked for hours on end, but with one well-placed munitions explosion from a pirate sampan, the enemy was forced to fall back. The siege lasted 7 days, most of which the enemy used to send explosive ships towards Cheng Sao's fleet. But with patience and skill, the bombs were safely brought to shore, and eventually the repairs on the junks had finished. Then a miracle happened. The wind changed directions. With a burst of speed, Madame Cheng pulled the ships to sea, sent the explosives back at the enemy, and blasted past the fleet. Madame Cheng had merely lost 40 men, and hadn't lost a single junk in the siege. But not all was good news, as the Blackfeet had still betrayed them, having taken a pardon from the Emperor. They would now have to face off against Western ships, Chinese ships, and their own allies. This is where Madame Cheng's genius comes into play. The single thing that makes her the greatest pirate in history. Realizing it was over. Madame Cheng was rich, and at this point she could only lose her power. She set the government her terms. She would disband the Pirate Confederation, but all of her 17,318 pirates would be granted amnesty. And they would keep all the booty they plundered. They could even join the army or get money to start their own businesses. Finally, Madame Cheng would keep a small fleet to herself for trade and any future products. The Chinese government refused to accept these terms. In response, Madame Cheng went to Canton, making a few stops to blow everything up along the way. She demanded to personally see Bai Ling, who, seeing how dangerous she was, agreed to every single term she had. Madame Cheng lived out the rest of her days with her new husband/adopted son, Chuang Po, eventually starting a gambling house, and peacefully dying at the ripe old age of maybe 69, possibly 68. Madame Cheng was the most successful pirate in the world, not because of fame, but because she lived a full, rich life. But mainly because she was unbelievably rich. Like, Jesus, she made a lot of money. Finally, Madame Cheng greatly impacted world history because she exposed the almost non-existent Chinese Navy. With the pirates mostly gone and the Chinese Navy barely intact, a small unknown group called the British burst onto the scene and began the Opium Wars. But that's a story for another time. This is the part of the video where I tell you to subscribe to Beano Games. Subscribe. Do it now. Do it later. Do it whenever you feel like. Subscribe.